Norfolk Business Show with Danny Snelling. Sponsored by MT Comms.
Okay, Rebecca.
Good morning.
Welcome to join us, Rebecca Penny. Yes.
Yes.
Right. How about starting off by saying how we know of you and how people should know of you and what business is called,
What I do.
that sort of thing, and what you get up to.
Yeah. So I've probably been a little bit under the radar actually the past few years in Norfolk. So I run a company called Planit Financial. So we are financial advisors essentially, but my background is very geared towards businesses. So I've worked with business owners, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about it, but for about 20 years, 25 years. So quite a lot of the work that we do is around building confidence and resilience within finances, but both personal finances and your business finances. So we do all the normal stuff, pensions, investments, all of that stuff. But the really nice, juicy stuff that we look at is like, how resilient is your business? Have you got balance sheet risks in there that we can remove through clever financial planning and all of that sort of stuff? So I set that business up. We're just over a year now. So that's going really well because we're approaching things from a different angle, and a lot of people are saying, I've not really thought about that before. I've thought about all this other stuff, but actually those 3 or 4 things that we're talking about, we've not even discussed with our accountant, with our existing advisors, with our bank, nothing like that. I also sit on the board at Banham Zoo. So Banham Zoo and Africa Alive, to provide kind of finance guidance and advice. So I've been doing that for a year now as well. Which is really interesting to keep my head in a completely different space. But that's a pretty big beast. So that's we're 7, 8, 9 varies turnover. So to be involved in a big corporate whilst you're running your own business is nice because it gives you both sides of kind of the dice, really.
Would you say then you kind of sit between the accountant and the sort of business coach? Would you, that sort of thing? Or?
So technically,
it's not really in its own category, is it?
No. So technically, on paper, if you want to look at qualifications-wise, technically, I'm a financial advisor. But I try and shy away from that actually, because if you tell someone you're a financial advisor, what happens is they either go, "You're going to sell me something," or they've decided they've already got one, or they know what you do and they don't need your help. So I try and steer the conversation more to where can we add some real value in the business. And sometimes we will work with business coaches. So sometimes a business coach will say, I'm working with this business, we're doing all these great things. Is there anything that we've missed here? And we'll say, okay, have you thought about if X, Y, Z happens and what you can put in place to mitigate that risk if you're going to go off and do this? We work quite closely with accountants as well, because accountants will tell you what has happened. Really good accountants will tell you what could happen if you want to do something and you should structure it in X, Y, Z way. A financial advisor or planner will look at things and say, well, we've got all these different options. Which one is the best for you, given budget, given circumstances, given preferences? Because the thing with finances, and again, I'm sure we'll talk about it with AI, is everyone has a different view on what they might like to do. So one solution that fits one business, someone in another business may go, yeah, but I don't fancy that because of X, Y, or X, Y, or Z. So there's lots of nuances in what we do. But yeah, we kind of cross between accountant, coach, advisor, and the bank, actually. I mean, I was the bank for a long time.
Offering FD services to a customer, maybe a business that doesn't have that department. If you like. Interesting stuff. So before we delve too much into the business side, let's hear more about you.
Yes.
And, do you come from these parts or local girl or not?
No, with my non-Norfolk twang.
I was trying to detect it.
No, so I moved around quite a lot as a child, actually. Born in South East London, which is probably where my
I couldn't
comes
pick it
from
up.
most. Well, so we lived in South East London. If you speak to my parents, we lived in Surrey, really. We lived in South East London on the border. Croydon, if you really want to go there. And we lived there till I was about 14. And then we moved from Croydon all the way to Cornwall. And so we're talking 30 years ago. And that was a big move for a 14-year-old to move the other side of the country. We didn't have smartphones, we didn't have tech, we didn't have any of that stuff. And so I was in Cornwall for between the ages of about 14 to 18. But then at the time there was no university in Cornwall, so everyone hit 18 and left Cornwall again. So I left Cornwall and toddled off to university in Southampton. Did economics in Southampton, which I loved, absolutely loved. And that was where I first got my first job in finance. But after university, I moved back to Cornwall, which is where I met my husband. But my husband is from Norfolk.
Right, that's the connection.
Yeah,
he dragged you back.
Yeah, well, we actually came back to Norfolk because it's really interesting because both Cornwall and Norfolk are, no-through counties. And I've done the same role within finance, both in Cornwall and in Norfolk. In Cornwall, unless you're in agriculture or you're in leisure, actually it's quite a challenge. If you're in Norfolk, the business community in Norfolk is amazing. Like, it's thriving.
Interesting. I've done a bit of travelling around the UK and done business in various towns and cities. So I didn't really ever get that feel for how big it is. But yeah, I've heard that said so many times over the last 15 odd years that compared to other towns and cities and counties, it is really thriving.
I think the proximity that we have here to Cambridge, to London, to the southeast means that there are people here who really want, not saying they don't in Cornwall, but who really want to grow businesses, who want to move around, who want to bring other people in. And in fact, that was the driver from coming from Cornwall. Well, it was two things. One, we didn't want to move our little one around potentially, and the opportunities are limited in the far southwest. And when I say Cornwall, I mean we were half an hour from Land's End, 45. So we were way down, not just you've just dipped over the bridge. But there's more opportunities for her here, but there was more opportunities for both of us business wise. And I always knew at some point I would leave banking and finance and go out on my own.
And it was NatWest you were with to start with, was it?
Yeah, so my very first job was with NatWest in outbound telesales.
Right.
In 2001. So I was one of those people that would phone you up at 8 o'clock at night and say, it's just a customer service call. Would you like to upgrade your current account? Yeah, absolutely. So I worked in a massive call centre in Southampton. All sorts of phone and tech everywhere and screens on the wall and your idle time being monitored and all of that sort of stuff. And that was a great job, actually, for learning. I wouldn't want to do it now, but I think anyone who needs to sell something or needs to get client buy-in, that sort of job is great, to learn your craft, learn your trade, learn how to deal with objections, learn how to deal with the fact that nobody wants to talk to you. And it was great as a student because we did 3 hours in the evening and then we were in the pub and all our friends were the other side of the bar.
It's weird. It's interesting. I've always sort of shied away from it. I'm above all that. I'd never do that. I'd done it the first few years. I had to. But I very quickly decided, no, I'm never going to do that. Do what you're good at. Employ people who are good at that. But I hated it. I really did. But you're right. It did make me learn a thing or two.
I think telesales is a great way to start off.
Yeah, I agree. You do learn so much, but as I was saying, it's kind of I think the best way to sell is to not sell and make it sound as if you're not selling to that person, or don't let them feel sold to, because that's just sticks red flags up straight away, doesn't it? And you think,
Well, I think so. We're going back 20 years, 25 years, and at that time, banks were trusted. Phoning from the bank, whilst people were slightly irritated by a call from the bank in the evening, there was, we were pre-banking crash. We were pre all your old school bank managers disappearing from the bank. So there was still an element of trust when the banks were calling. So it was okay then. We still weren't overly popular, but doing it now, I think, would be incredibly
and
tough.
I guess the people you were calling as well weren't business owners. They're not used to being sold to. I remember the calls coming in. I was quite naive and young, thinking, they're calling me. There must be, is there something special about me, or is it because I got too little or too much in the bank? I don't know. I remember the calls coming in, but interesting. But I think there might be a revival of telesales, just because people have shied away from it. The trouble is now we're plagued by faceless companies doing telesales, and they're just so obvious when they come that most people now know to avoid them. But I'm talking telesales with, people you've maybe already interacted with. I've got probably 1,500 business cards in that drawer, that I've never called one of them. But, if I were to just ring a few of them one day and just offer to have a coffee, that would probably, but.
I think we need time for stereotypes to change, don't we? So I was listening to something the other day and they were saying the notion of a used car salesman actually came from where we had, within the boomer generation, when they all learnt to drive, suddenly they all wanted a second-hand car because they couldn't afford new ones. So there was a shortage of these second-hand cars, and we had suddenly the emergence of this salesman who was like, I'll give you whatever you need. And so this connotation of a used car salesman has come, and that is still taking time, to unwind, but that industry has changed, has changed quite a lot. But we still think in our heads of, the used car salesman, telesales. We have that kind of assumption that we've just, again, financial advisor is another one.
Double glazing salesman.
Yeah, we've decided, don't we? But actually, as a business owner, someone who can pick the phone up and talk to someone and get them engaged and, potentially bring that in as a lead and then a sale is a great attribute, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, I interjected there. So you're in NatWest, you're still down south?
Yeah, so I did that job whilst I was at university. And when I left university, I transferred with NatWest back to Cornwall for a couple of years, and I joined the commercial property team. So I was a junior within the commercial property team. So I've been working for the bank for a few years, got my economics degree. I know exactly what I'm doing. Walked into this room with these guys who were writing property debt, and I was like, I haven't got a clue what's going on. But I was lucky because when I joined that office, there was 5 people, and they were running the whole commercial property finance for NatWest in Cornwall. So I got really close to the action. I started to understand and learn what they were doing and learn how the banks wrote debt, what they were looking for, what they would lend on, what they wouldn't lend on. Obviously, that's changed over the years, but seeing it firsthand and going out with the guys, they were all guys at that stage, and seeing them lend some money on a plot of land, and then you go back 3 months later and there's some foundations, and you go back like 8 months later and there's some bricks and this and that. To me, that was fascinating. It was like, this is how people do it. Like, this is where people get their money to do this sort of stuff. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I followed my heart back to London because my boyfriend at the time I'd met at university. I'd gone back to Cornwall, he'd gone to London, he was at the bank as well. So I actually ended up back in Croydon, transferred again with NatWest. And I think sometimes we miss this with our careers, that these big organisations actually do give you the opportunity to move around. So I transferred to Croydon, to the commercial team in Croydon, and worked on a team with businesses in distress, which was interesting. So the property was all about, building these things and building this property and selling it and making money. And the distress team was kind of, right, how do we, 1, protect the bank's position, but 2, try and give some decent service to these businesses that are struggling. This was, again, pre-banking crash, and at the time when banks were, we would have seen it in the press, charging those clients more for the extra resources. So there were moments in that job where I thought, are we really, whose best interests are we working in here? The corporates or the clients? Sometimes it was the clients, but sometimes it was the banks, because, banks they have shareholders. They're there to make a profit. We have a very interesting view and kind of approach to banking in this country, which is, we seem to forget that that's what they're there for, because we're all brought up with this, or you get a free bank account. And, when you set up a business, I think what often some people are surprised in is, what do you mean it's not free banking for a business? You might get 12 months free banking, and then you get a letter from the bank going, we've had your free banking now, we're going to charge you. What do you mean I have to pay for this? So I did that for 18 months, actually. And at the time, NatWest had this policy that you had to work in a role for 18 months. And then you became releasable into other roles within the business. It was their way of managing resource. And I remember the day I'd been in that role for 18 months, a job came up at Coutts on the Strand, because they were part of the NatWest RBS group. And I remember going to my boss and I was like, I've seen this job, exactly the same job, but just within kind of the private banking division. I can't go unless you've been here 18 months. I was like, well, actually, it's today. Yeah. And he couldn't stop me. So I applied for a job on the Strand and got it, which was amazing. And that was, again, the same job. So that was still at kind of junior level, supporting a banker. But we worked with clients in that team from startup. So you might have someone's hobby business, or we want to keep the wife or the kids happy, here's some money, go and open this, all the way up to sort of 40-50 million pound corporates. And that was writing debt for them, writing debt for the bank, but also, monitoring risks for, it's badged up as for the client, essentially it's for the bank. Yeah. But that was fascinating to work with all sorts of different clients and different people. And then at the age of 28, I think, about 28, 29, I got my own clients and my own portfolio. So I think there were about 50 bankers on the banking floor, and there were 4 of us that were female. But it was interesting because now I do some work with younger advisors coming through into the industry, and quite often what people will come up against when you're, should we say, maybe less experienced, or you're at the beginning of your career journey, is people don't want to take advice from you when you're younger. But I was fortunate that 20 years ago, the banks would invest money in time and training. We had all sorts of training on how to use your words to build things. You stand up if you want to take control of the room, that sort of thing. Yeah, no,
I've said it to business coaches and other people, sat in that chair. The only people I'd want to take business advice from is for people who've been there and done it. And it's so important because people can take the wrong advice sometimes, and you get all these YouTubers on who've just got rich from pure luck usually, or viewing numbers on podcasts and goodness knows what, and they haven't got a clue how to run a business.
No,
because they're not.
No,
I wouldn't say that's not a business, but that's different. That's how to run a podcast, or how to make money from online stuff. That's not running a business.
Yeah, so we see it quite a lot in the financial kind of planning and advice space, is people online telling you to invest. Or I saw one the other day, if I was looking after my parents' money, this is what I would do. Bang, bang, bang. And you think you don't know the nuances around people's situations.
And they're not governed by the same standards.
No.
Financial.
I am on social media as Mrs. Penny. I have an Instagram as her, but I have to be very careful about the words I use. Like, for example, I can say on there, Danny, you could do this. I can't say, Danny, you should do this. So if I say you should do this, you're going to go, oh, Rebecca told me to do this. But if I say, oh, she said I could, that's one of the things I could look at. Yeah. But there's a lot of content creators saying, do this, do that. Oh, yeah. And because of the lack of kind of financial awareness and sort of stuff in this country, we think it's okay, that content, because we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
So, so I went to Coutts, and that was amazing. And had some really interesting clients and some great fun there. And that was the first place, actually. So the way the retail banks, so NatWest would be cast as a retail bank, Halifax, Nationwide Mutual, but is a lot of the lending to small businesses is done on a computer. The account manager will put the bits and pieces in, and the computer says no or yes. When you work in the private bank scenario, you have your own lending mandate. So you are that computer. So you decide whether that business can have that money that it needs to grow or to invest or not. So that was really interesting to have that authority. There are safeguards in place over certain limits. You've got another pair of eyes on things and whatever. But that was really interesting. And that really opened my eyes to actually what we need to be thinking about in business if we want to want funding, or we want to grow. That also comes with challenges, because your clients know that you're the one making that decision.
You're the one to blame
and exactly a bit like you mentioned, you do come up against, well, you've not worked in my industry. How do you know? So you have to work to kind of a broad range of principles around business, and that tends to be around business resilience and business continuity. And, I think I put a post on social media yesterday. Banks don't care if you make some mistakes. They're not interested in the minutiae of what you're doing, but they want to know that your business is secure and it can weather the storm of these things that go on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I hear people all the time being sort of declined for loans or lending or, and anyone can see from a mile away that is a good investment to do, but the computer says no, because of whatever data you're putting into it, and it's unfair because there's so many missed opportunities. I've seen, people go under just because the bank says no, and it is frustrating to hear that, because just from a few sentences of description of what they're trying to do, you can tell straight away. Well, certainly that's a good idea.
But so part of this, and it'll be slightly controversial, part of this comes back to our belief that we'll go to the bank and the bank will give us money because that's what they're supposed to do. All banks and all lenders and funders have slightly different risk appetite. So sometimes it simply comes down to this lender doesn't like the telecoms industry for whatever reason. But ultimately what they're looking at is so there was two things we used to look at when we were in the bank. The first is, what's the risk of strain here? If you're looking at lending money, it's predominantly the risk of financial strain here. So you might take the example of someone having a really big contract. And what we used to get often, I was like, I got this great contract with Tesco's. And someone would come to you and go, I want to borrow some money because I'm going to do this. And my heart would go, oh no. Yeah. And the clients go, I've got this contract with Tesco's. For the lender, they're going, whoa, hang on. We've got this massive contract. You've got a massive risk of financial strain because if Tesco's or Google or Amazon, whoever we want to be,
click their fingers and say no.
Click their fingers or change something, your business is going to be strained. Yeah. So the banks will go, no, that's a concentration risk. We don't like it. So that's a black mark in that box. If someone comes to the lender and goes, I've got this massive contract with Tesco's and I've also got these contracts over here, the lender will go, yes, we got a big risk of financial strain over here, but we've got some what we call powers of resistance within the business over here with these other contracts that we've got.
I think, perhaps the examples I could give is in that example is, we've got this massive contract with Tesco's. They've signed a contract to say they're going to be paying us in 3 months' time. There's no sort of ability to speak to a human or tick a different box to say, look, this is guaranteed money that's coming in, if the so there's that, it probably wasn't seen in Coots, for example, but in most high street lenders, I'm sure it's the biggest frustration from businesses anyway, and I see it in property as well. I'm into property and I hear it time and time again, the high street lenders do not understand creative ways of financing property deals, and it's only the smaller brokers and such who get that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say to a business or someone wanting to borrow money in no sense is there will be someone that will do it. Maybe they won't want to do it at the fees you want to pay or the interest rates you want to pay. So you need to make a decision on what is your goal? Is your goal to get the deal over the line or this or that? But quite often people say, well, they've said no, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to bother. But that's what they'll look at. And then they'll look at, sometimes they'll take that a step further. We might have a great contract with Tesco's. And actually let's say we've got a legal contract that we've had a nice law firm look over and they've gone, this is watertight. They can't get out of this. They can't change it. You're good. Then the bank will say, okay, so who negotiated that contract with Tesco's? And you'll go, oh, it was me. Really proud of myself. I do all the negotiating for the business. And then the bank will go,
what if you leave the business?
What if you get run over by one of the lorries in the Tesco's car park, Danny? Who's negotiating the contracts now? So then they'll say, well, we got a risk of financial strain here because Danny's doing all the negotiating. Have we got a power of resistance there? Well, no, because we haven't got anyone else that will step in. Right, well, we're going to insist that, and in fact, the banks don't do this, and this is part of what we do at Planit. We'll then say, right, we want some insurance in there so that if something happens to Danny, we've got I'm going to make this up. We've got 300 grand a year, which is Danny's salary. We can pay to someone else, immediately available to draft someone in who can take over negotiating those contracts. So there's no financial strain on the business. So the bank will look at, 3, 4, 5 different layers of this sort of stuff to make sure that their money is secure. So I often think that as business owners, people won't potentially like this, but I think we need to think about our businesses a bit more like the banks think about lending their money.
No, it's very true, very true. The time and time again, we're in the technology world. What failover have you got here? Nothing. What happens if, I don't know, BT comes along and slices through your cable outside? What happens if your office burns down? They've got zero plan for that. None, ever. And I'm not talking about rarely, I'm talking ever, none have, planned that far ahead. And it's... and
I get it, it's not the exciting stuff, is it?
No, you don't plan for the bad times, but you've got to plan to some extent, don't you? Certainly around directors no longer being there, you've got to plan for these things. So,
but I think as entrepreneurs and as business owners, we're always really wildly optimistic that things won't happen.
True. Yeah, and if we weren't optimistic, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
No, because if you think in the investment world, for example, so when I talk to people about their investments and their pension, I don't want to take too much risk with that because the markets are going to fall down. You talk to someone about getting run over by a bus or losing a massive contract. Oh, that'll never happen.
Exactly.
So we have these kinds of conflicting things in our brains. But that going back to that case, that was really interesting. Having the autonomy to say yes or no, and that taught me how to identify risks in a business, how we can plug those those gaps to make things viable. Because most of the time we go back to the business and say, we'll do this, but on these pre-drawdown conditions. So we want this in place before we do it. And when we've done it, we want this in place on an ongoing basis.
Did you ever get to find out if things ever went wrong or good or bad, or was it then passed to another department?
So
that decision you made to lend, for example, shot you in the foot.
The way I was trained was, if this goes wrong, you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So you are conscious that if it goes wrong, you have to deal with it. Where it tends to go wrong is if the monitoring and the controls that are put in place aren't kept. You don't keep on top of them. Banks ask for management information for a reason. It's not just so you can scrabble around every month to do it. You should be, a good business will be on top of it anyway. If you can get to, they call them early warning indicators, if you can get to those early warning indicators before, and numbers will tell you that, management information will tell you that, meetings will tell you that, then it is unlikely that you'll get to that place where things crash. Unless, we have things that are thrown out left field, don't we? Like COVID and those sorts of things. I didn't, touch wood, have anything that went completely to the wire. But I will caveat that with actually private banking, and people often say this, don't they? Oh, they're lending money to the rich people who don't need it. At the upper end of the market, people use debt in a different way.
And they have failovers, and they have stuff they can sell when it does go wrong to protect them. So they have less risk.
But they're difficult conversations. You've got to sell your nice big house because we want,
don't sell your yacht,
And I've had some of those conversations where we want you to sell your business and they don't want to because they worked hard for it. So I've not had anything go completely under, but yes, certainly conversations like that where the bank wants you to do this. Well, we don't want to do that.
So what made you leave there, and where did you go from there?
So I was at Coutts when the crash happened in 2000. RBS crash happened in 2008, and slightly cocooned from it because actually the biggest challenge we had in Coutts was people coming in and wanting to take loads of cash, and we were like, we don't hold that much cash in the vault, and we please don't wander off down the Strand with all this money. And that was, I did start to think, things are, this is a bit bit different. Something's going on here. And I was conscious that we'd been left quite alone, actually, that part of the bank. But when the government stepped in and said, we're going to rescue RBS, which they've just come out of now, I did think we're going to get looked at how we work. And we had great autonomy in Coutts, and it was you make those lending decisions. But I knew we would get wrapped up in this kind of government thing. So I did start to think, where do I go and what do I do next? But in 2013, I got the opportunity to do the same job that I was doing back in Cornwall. And those jobs don't come up very often in Cornwall. In fact, I don't think they even exist now in Cornwall due to restructuring. I think they're all in Plymouth and, cover the massive patch. So I left Coutts and went back to Cornwall. So whereas I'd been a junior in the office before, I was then senior with my own clients, my own portfolio. And I probably, with hindsight, I don't think I gave it as much thought. I was just so concerned about wanting to go back to Cornwall and keeping my career that I have to take this job. And I remember the front page of the West Britain, so it's like the equivalent of the EDP, things like that, said, woman, the day I got back to Cornwall, woman 74, stuck in a deck chair. And I thought, what have I done? I've gone from
stuck in a deck.
And the front line was like, she was okay, just a little bit tanned. And I was like, oh, I've moved from, the Strand, Trafalgar Square.
That
all
sounds
of
like a
this.
Norfolk headline.
It does.
To me, yeah.
But yes, but I thought, no, this is going to be good. This is fine. And then, so I looked after a general trading portfolio. So they're predominantly family businesses within that. But the main bulk of, not all, but the main bulk of the successful companies down there are your farming, are your property, your leisure. And because we had so much of that, in different pockets of the country, you will have bank managers who look after, they'll have all of that within their portfolio. But where you're heavily populated, like here, we'll have agricultural managers that only deal with that sector. The generalist space there was not as much opportunity as I would have liked within that to help businesses grow, to give them funding, to give them lending. But about a week after I moved back to Cornwall, I met my husband. So that kind of saved that. Have I done the right thing? He was in the military down there. So I met him, and then
Navy?
He was in the Navy. He was at Coldrose in Helston. Yeah, but he's from Heatherset, which is where we live. So he had a different view of Cornwall, because the week he'd got down to Cornwall, he got put on base, and it was I think it was May of that year, and they had like this abnormally sunny weather, and he was like, look at this, we've got the beaches and the sun, and this is going to be great. And then we kind of both came together at a point where we were like, is this where we want to be? And decided that we didn't. But we knew at that point that, I'm jumping a couple of years, but we knew at that point that we were going to get married and probably have a family. So we stuck it out a little bit, and then the military brought in these 9 month deployments, and we were like, that's too long. I was like, if you can have a baby with someone else, that's too long. So we knew they were restructuring in Cornwall, so we just waited. And I was like, I've been with NatWest RBS Group for 16 or so years, and I was like, there's going to be a good payout here, so we'll wait till that opportunity comes, and then we'll jump ship. And that's what we did. We all got called into a room at the bank, and in fact I already knew, because I'd had to tell my boss I was pregnant, and they announced that they'd want volunteers for redundancy, and everyone in the room, their faces sort of dropped, and I was like I'll go. So that's what we did. So I quit my job, and I think I left a few months before I had the little one, and we stayed down there for a year. I was off for a year. He had a year's notice in the military, and we came to Norfolk for a week, and we rang around all the estate agents, and you'll get this, and we said, we're coming to Norfolk for a week, and we are going to buy a house. And they all went, yeah. We were like, no, we've got a week, and we're gonna do it. And we did. In fact, the house we bought, we were packing the car up on the day to leave, and I was supposed to be packing, but I was on Rightmove, and this house came up, no pictures. And I said, one picture of the front, and I said to my husband, that's the house we're going to buy. So I phoned the agent, and they said, it's not on the market yet, it's not coming on for 2 weeks. And I was like, we're coming next week, we need to buy a house. And persuaded them to let us see it, and we bought it. But they didn't believe us. We're going to buy a house this week. And we did. We saw like 10, and we were like, we will pick one of them because we didn't want to come backwards and forwards. So it was at that point, when we came back to Norfolk and did a bit longer in the military, that I then joined our family business, which was an interesting 3 years because I sat on the other side of the table from the bank. So I had the little one, but my dad said to me, he was 63-ish at the time, given what I'd been doing with businesses, do you want to come on board and we'll talk about succession and what happens next? So we have we've just exited actually last year via employee ownership trust.
Okay.
So we did that last year, but that is
they're interesting things.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a long process, and a bit of umming and ahhing, and then a last minute rush and a push to put it through actually before the budget last year. Long process that was. So I'm not involved in that anymore particularly, but that's an interesting business. So it's print media, but we've had to change that quite considerably over the years because obviously print is challenging. So that's in their house builder and agricultural architectural space.
Okay.
But that was really interesting. So I did that 3 years with Dad. We took the business through a growth program with Cranfield University. So you kick out with a 5-year plan essentially of where you're going to go with the business. So they've had things like Go Ape, Hotel Chocolat, those sorts of businesses through that program. And at the end of ours, we decided that was the route we'd go through the EOT. But that was really interesting. And I think that gave me the real bite of, maybe I set this up. I think I'd always, because my dad's always been self-employed, I think I'd always had that kind of niggling, I wonder if I could do this myself in there. And I think a lot of us who own our own businesses have that. I just got caught in the corporate for a while. But then when I had the freedom, the opportunity.
Had you had those thoughts during the corporate times, or just had this niggle in the back of your mind that you hadn't sort of vocalised?
I'd seen so many business owners, don't get me wrong, I know how difficult it is, but I'd seen so many business owners growing and building these businesses that they wanted to grow and were really passionate about, that they wanted to earn well from, and I had looked at them over the years and gone, I could do this. People do it, but when you're in a corporate environment, that's a safety net. You get paid. You get paid every month. You got everything taken care of. You
also only had a business owner in front of you selling the positives of you don't see what they go through day in, day out, I guess. So.
Well, I did when I went to work with Dad.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I won't share some of the things, but some of the things. And when I spent those 3 years in that business, I was like, well, now I know why they're not returning my paperwork that I think is top priority, because they're dealing with all this other stuff that is on their desk and all these people challenges that they've got. And you've got me from the bank going, can you send me my form?
I got to mention it because this week, actually, a very old friend of mine, I've known him probably 20 odd years, but we're both business owners now. I sent him an email a few weeks ago. He was away on holiday and then he had some operation or something. And he said to me, and I don't know why I haven't heard this said to me before, but nobody else would understand what we go through day in, day out. I think you said the chunks of, literally people dragging us from every angle. And nobody, just those words, nobody else would understand. Mikey, if you're watching this, then, but it was a bit of an epiphany moment when I read that text, and I was like, well, I wasn't chasing him for the email because I knew what he's going through, but just the way he said it, nobody else would understand what we put up with. But it was so true. And so true.
There's so many challenges to deal with, isn't there? There's just, and stuff just comes at you out of left field.
Yeah,
but that's
every
part,
direction. Yeah.
Part of the skill of running your business is to know what I was reading something the other day and it said, "Are you in control or are you in charge?" And when we're running a business, there are certain things that we cannot be in charge of. The government legislation or the changes in tax things. Yeah. We can't be in charge of that. But we can be in control of what we can be in control of. And
even once you are there and you think everything's running sweetly without you, there's still, as I've found out in recent years, a a curveball thrown at you that puts your banks back about 5 years. So, yeah, absolutely. So you left your father's business and straight away set up, or was there
I'd love to say yes. So I left working with Dad, and we were in Norfolk by this stage, and because he's based in the southeast, so it was easy for me to do that. And the sensible thing to do at that time would have been to set up on my own. I didn't. I did what I think sometimes we often do, which is go into not panic mode, but I need
procrastination.
No, the opposite. We need to earn money. I'm going to go and get a job back in the bank.
Yeah.
So that was when I went to Handelsbanken. So I went to I cut back to my telesales days. I cold approached the branch manager in Handelsbanken in Norwich and said, "Can we have a coffee? You might not have a role now, but I know that people always want a pipeline of good people. This is my experience. Can we have a chat?" So I had a chat with him, and then a week later he phoned me up and said, "I've got some maternity cover if you want it." So I went in on a contract to cover one of the admin girls with a view to when a banker role comes up, either in Norwich, Bury or Cambridge, then I would be their succession into that role. So that's exactly what happened. Within 6 months, I'd moved to the office in Bury St Edmunds to run their corporate book. So again, looking after SMEs and all their requirements and writing debt for the bank. Did that that was when COVID hit.
Right.
So that was a challenge. COVID hit, the government announced all these bounce back and CBILS loans, and everyone in the banks went, hang on a minute, how do we do that? You've told everyone that we're going to do this, and we've got no infrastructure to do it. So that was a really interesting time, quite stressful. And because as a bank, we had to be up and running. So the teams were split down the middle. So we were a week on, week off in the office in case clients needed us, because some of our clients were still working, not everyone was at home. And then about a year into that role, the bank said that they merged the Bury and Ipswich offices. But obviously I was Norwich side, everyone else lived Bury side, so they went to Ipswich and I came back to the Norwich branch and worked within the...
Are they still on Prince Wales Road?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah. So I was in there for about 18 months I was writing mortgage debt, complex mortgage debt. So anyone who's got kind of complex income, complex property, anything that, your standard bank will go, no thanks, we don't like that. Or so I was doing that sort of stuff for that kind of high net worth book. And then I went, I don't want to do this anymore. And I left them on very good terms. I still see them, but had a grown up chat with my boss and said, I want to spend some time with the little one. Don't quite know what I want to do. So January, what are we now? 25.
Yeah.
So January 23, I went in after Christmas and I said, I'm going to go, and that was scary.
Yeah, I bet.
That was scary.
Yeah.
But I knew in my gut that we do it. So I took most of that year off, and then started the process at the back end of that year of re-registration with the Financial Conduct Authority, because you lose when you move from an establishment, you lose your authorisations. You're kind of authorised within a group. So and that takes sort of 4, 5, 6 months
but presumably easier than someone starting afresh. I mean,
you wouldn't get authorised if you're not kind of from the industry and this and that, because there's all sorts of compliance things. So I outsource all my compliance. So I am quite a one-man band, but I have a whole team of compliance that sits around with what I do, because I recognise that I'm looking after people's money, I'm helping them with their businesses. Just as I talk to clients about if something happens to them, I want security there for my clients if something happens to me. And then we went live. So we got reauthorised and then we went live sort of September last year. So it took 6-8 months to get everything off the ground. But it's going good. And I think that sweet spot of, how resilient is your business, what happens if X, Y, Z happens, the business owners are like, we've not really thought about this before. We're working our nuts off to do this. We're giving everything to the lenders, but actually one or two things happen over here and it's all all gone.
And did you have some contacts, some clients at least that you knew were going to come across to you to start with, or? Not specifically, no. So I had some cash behind me, and as I'd worked out the numbers as you would imagine. And my worst case scenario was, I'm heavily qualified, I'll go and get another job. We try it and we see what happens. I did exactly the same assessment. I said, what are our risks of financial strain here, and what are our powers of resistance? We've got some property we can sell. We've got some things we can do. We're not just jumping into it and can't pay, next month's bills. But I haven't had any previous clients come specifically from the bank. But I've been quite well received by sort of accountants, solicitors, things like that, because I know them through my banking things, and with referrals and things like that, they're only going to put people they trust in front of their clients. So, but it's good. It's hard work to go from nothing. Absolutely, yeah. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, no, it's good though. It's a thrill, isn't it? When you're doing a good job for people.
And obviously the big reward is you're working for yourself. You're working for your own benefit, not someone else's. How have you found it then, the first sort of, is there much of a work-life balance yet? Have you got structure to your life, and have you got, over those initial hurdles, do you think?
Yeah, so I made a conscious decision that when I set the business up, that I would, because I knew what I was doing. I'm reluctant to say I didn't know how to do it, but I had new tech stack, I knew everything. So I had new processes. I made a conscious decision to onboard kind of 5, 10, 15 clients, and then we pause and then we market. Not we market and everyone goes, oh yeah, great, can you help me? And I go, well, no, I can't. Or your service levels drop because actually you're trying to work out how, what the process is. Because when you're in a corporate, that's all provided to you. All, inverted commas, you have to do is your job, is the client-facing stuff. You have a whole team of people behind you that pick everything else up. When you do it yourself, you got to deliver. So I've been through that process. So we're going out to market. So we'll be much more visible on social media and things like this probably over the next few months, because we have capacity now to take people on.
Yeah, you made a wise choice there. I would think, biting off more than you can chew is probably very detrimental to a business.
And when you're dealing with people's money, trust is so important. They need to know you can deliver, and they need to know that you can be timely and all of these things. And we find it difficult enough in this country to talk openly about numbers. A bit different in the business community. It is a bit different in the business community, but to talk openly about this. So when you find someone that you trust with that stuff, you need them on it. So if you can't be on it, you have to take a step back until you can deliver.
So if you could sort of walk us through a typical client who would come to you, what can you do for them? All the various aspects, and how do they... how long they're a client, that sort of thing.
Okay. So there's a number of different ways that we can work with people. So if we take an example of, let's say we've got a owner-managed business, but we've got two owners in business together, not husband and wife, different business partners. You might have a team of, say, 3, 4, 5 people upwards. I mean, that's the sweet spot. Anything over sort of 15, 20 people, you are getting into much larger kind of territory. So for those individual business owners, we will look at all sorts of things. So we'll start with their personal financial positions. So we can look at what we call cash flow planning. So what normally happens is the business owners will neglect their personal finances. They'll maybe think, oh, well, I'm going to sell the business, or that'll be my pension. So we'll look at things like, well, okay, if you're going to sell the business, do you know how much you need to sell it for to have the lifestyle that you want after you sell? Oh, no, I've not thought about that. Okay, well, let's think about that. So we do that with both parties. And, potentially wise partners, things like that involved. So we'll almost start with a blank piece of paper on that and say, right, let's brain dump what we want life to look like. Maybe now, but also maybe when we've maybe finished with what we're doing. And not everyone wants to leave, but some people may want to take a phased exit or something like that. So we'd establish what they want, then we'll look at how on earth we're going to do that. So do we need to be extracting money by way of pensions? Do we need to be paying ourselves tax efficiently? Do we really need to be chasing X valuation if actually we only need Y valuation to have the life we want? Then we'll look at those what we were talking about with the risks of financial strain within the business that is going to affect their ability to achieve those lives that they want. So if you've got a 2-owner business, for example, if you've got standard articles of association, which most of us have, there are clauses within that that will affect what happens if something happens to one of the business owners. And this is where we talk about what risks have we got in here and which ones can we plug. So if something happens to what, so we've both done our plans, got 2 business owners, both done our plans of what we want to achieve in life. One of the business owners, something sadly happens to them. Suddenly, business owner number 2 is now in business with business owner 1's wife
yeah, cousin,
who doesn't like business owner number 2 because every day business owner 1 has been coming home going, oh, bloody hell, we did this. They don't talk about that together. They talk it with their wives. Yeah. Wife's got absolutely no knowledge of how this business... I'm stereotyping massively.
Yeah, I just realised I'd done that, didn't I? I said wife. I should have... partner.
Well, I'm stereotyping over who knows what. But so we've now got someone who'd had their whole life mapped out over here about what we're going to do with the business, and a wife or potentially kids or... dependent on, what we've got in terms of relatives, now in business together. So the wife is thinking, well, I'll just sell my share of the business over here. But wife thinks the business is worth, let's just pluck these numbers from her. Yeah. Well, she thinks that her share of the business is worth $1 million because that's what her late husband has told her. That's what they had the valuation for. Business partner number 2 is going, this business isn't worth 2 million anymore, so I'll offer you 20 grand. That's a bit low, big difference. I'll offer you 300 grand because half of the business has gone. And the wife goes, no, I'm not doing that. So what then happens is a competitor goes, seeing what's happened over here. So they swoop in and they do offer the wife, 500 or they offer just under what she could have got before. So now we've got the business over here in with a competitor, and it all basically, you can see how it all unravels. Yeah. But so what we will work with is putting an infrastructure in place that says, and it's insurance, it's planning, there is a policy that pays out if either party die. There is the money to pay out these people's estates immediately, and there are what we call cross option agreements that mean this has to happen. So. There's various different ways you can do it, but essentially what it does is it protects both business owners and their families from still being able to achieve what they want. So I had one the other day, for example, someone's bought into a company, they've got a shareholder loan, there's absolutely no protection in there. The shareholder loan says if something happens to that person, then they need to repay that loan. Well, where are you going to repay that loan from if something happens to you? Yeah. But we see that sort of stuff a lot in property. You might sign a personal guarantee for the bank. Personal guarantees form, and directors' loans form part of estates. So it's all of that sort of stuff that we work with clients in around actually what contingency plans have we got in place if something happens, and then we take that down from the owner's leadership of the business down into who's your profit makers within the business, what protection have we got in place for them. Because if you've got these plans of what lifestyle you want as a business owner and your business can't deliver that, that's when we start to have a problem.
And how long is that presumably you're setting something up for them, there's a lot of work initially, is there, and then is there some sort of retainer on that service, or is it?
So the way we're doing it at the moment is we don't charge to review what you've got in place. Partly that's because people don't tend to have anything in place normally. So what we will look at is we essentially look at the company accounts to see what liabilities we've got in there that would need to be repaid if something went wrong. We look at the profit structure, where that's coming from, and then we will review the market. But the way the insurance market works is we get paid from the providers. So at the moment, because what the providers don't want is people going off and setting themselves up with these insurances, and they're not right and they haven't got the right things, and it's all even more of a mess. So at the moment we don't charge to do it. So if anyone wants anything like that looking at, I'm happy to look at it because we get remunerated. If we get to a point where we have too much of it to do, we may put in an admin fee.
What about, if you look at, for that example, two business partners, and you come in, look at their paperwork and say, this isn't right, you need to redo that. Do you get involved in the redoing of the contracts, that sort of thing, or is it just an advisory role telling them what they've got to do and then they go away and find a commercial lawyer to redraft the contracts, or is that?
So some of it, the paperwork is already there as part of the insurance process. So these options to purchase essentially are part of the package of paperwork that we can look at. If we're talking about a much bigger, larger deal, then potentially we'll work with lawyers and things like that. But essentially we're looking at putting in place the answer to the question, I suppose, of where's the money coming from. So something happens to me, my business partner will buy the share of the business. Well, where's that money coming from? Because he's spent all his money. Is it going to come from the business? It's not going to come from the bank, because the bank aren't going to give it to you anymore. So it's answering that question every time you're thinking within your business. Well, if X happens, Y will happen. I'm talking about when things go wrong, not business things. You need to be thinking about, well, where's the money coming from for that? Because if there's been a shock in the business, the bank are going to go, well, we don't want to give you any more here because we're not sure how this is going to play out. And what you don't want, is, as business owners, we want our families to have value for what we've built and things like that.
So to avoid our listeners thinking that's kind of all you do, deal with that, give us another maybe.
So we do that. We can also look at employee benefits packages. So we can look at pensions for employees. We can look at private medical cover. We can look at the insurances that you provide your employees. We can go into businesses, talk about those benefit structures. We're just working on something at the moment as well that will allow us to provide businesses with a solution to actually understand what their employees want from employee benefits packages and also how much they value those. So we're looking at a solution like that.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, so there's a whole host of things we can do.
And I guess finally, what can we help you with? Who can we get you introduced to? Who might be listening out there that you think you'd be able to work wonders for?
So I was thinking about this question. So am I allowed two answers?
Absolutely,
to this?
you can go.
Okay.
For your life,
So the first answer would be anybody who genuinely is interested in taking this stuff seriously. We speak to a lot of people who say, "Oh yeah, I should do that," and then you talk to them and they just don't.
That's true of, I think, 95% of business owners out there, I'm sure. The way we work is we will have one or two conversations with you, and then we will pick that up and we will run with it, and then we will come to you with a solution. Not, can you have a look at this? Can you have a look at that? How do you feel about this? We will get some information, we'll go and find a solution, and we'll present that to you. Same with pensions. People go, "Oh, I must look at my pension." Well, you don't need to look at it. I'll look at it. Yeah.
So anyone who has got that sort of stuff on their to-do list, anyone who's got people who will be affected by an issue in their business, and I would argue that is most.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is most business owners, but it can be anything from a one-man band all the way up. There's structures you can put in place for anyone.
Okay.
And then the second answer was, I was thinking about this because I listened to some of the podcasts. The second answer was, who do you think I need to speak to?
Me. No, honestly, I was thinking about myself, obviously, through a lot of that. I've got obviously a business partner here. I've got a business partner in another business. I've got a SIP pension that I'm in on with three of us in commercial property, and it's. I don't think any of us know where to begin with. A lot of this, we're just going for it, and.
So if you've got commercial, so pensions can form. When I talk about this, I'm not talking about the inheritance tax things, but pensions will form part of people's estates. And sometimes, if you've got commercial property and you've got debt within those commercial property structures,
I haven't got debt. But
if you have,
it's like the issue is really we're all three different ages. Yeah. So we're all three going to. At what point do we decide to sell it? Or
you've got directors' loans in companies; they form part of estates and need repaying those sorts of things. So this is what this does: is it secures everyone essentially, if that stuff. But I'm more than happy to have a chat.
Yeah, I think we should. Do you want named people? Goodness me. I think you'd be better off speaking to people who speak to these sorts of people.
Yeah.
Like accountants.
Yeah, which I do.
You've already spoken to Chris downstairs. Perhaps there's some other. Gemma Crane would be a good one to speak to as well, because she's involved in the HR, and I actually had her on the show last week, although that isn't published yet. So do listen to that one.
I have met Gemma briefly. We met each other at Christmas.
That would be a great
briefly.
introduction. I'm sure you can work well together, but can't think of anyone else top of my head other than just about every business owner.
Well, and this is the thing.
But the idea is to be specific here. So my specifics are going to be accountants, I think, obviously. But Gemma would be a good one. Yeah, let's get just have a coffee with her. I'm sure that'll be beneficial for you both. Anything else you want to say? Anything exciting coming up in the business? Anything? Yeah.
So we are doing some exciting stuff, which I can't totally share yet, because I'm regulated. We have so many talents to say what we can't say. So one of the things that we are doing is, I am a big believer in what goes around comes around. And one of the biggest things that people say to me when we talk about money and finances, whether that's personal or business, is nobody educates us on this stuff. So one of the things that I am looking to do and launch in September is we're going to bring, so Planit, the business, is going to bring financial education to schools in Norfolk. Oh,
amazing. Yeah. I've got two boys, 21, 22, 23, something like that. They keep changing their age.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of my biggest bugbears about their whole schooling was, they're just not taught the very basics of money. I just remember, I think it was 17, and I got asked by one of what's a direct debit, and what's a standing order, and how are they not? They're taught all this other stuff, and they're not taught the very basics of banking, and I mean they must do at some degree, but not really. Paying bills, living your life. What you should be paying for, what you shouldn't be paying for, what is average, what is normal, what do normal people spend money on. Those sorts of really basic questions aren't taught. That aside, my biggest bugbear was they're always talking about getting a job and not starting a business. But I like to think I corrected that in my son's school.
So we're looking at that, and so when we do launch that, some engagement from people would be amazing on that, because I'm really passionate that we have to, and because kids pick up so much stuff. So they pick up things in two ways. They pick up, so my daughter is 8, and she said to me the other day, she said, "Mummy, what's the difference between a debit card and a credit card?" And I was like, where have you heard this from? She's heard that from us, because saying simple things like, "Oh, well, we'll put that on the credit card because then we're covered on insurance." And she's gone, "Oh, what's..." And amazing that she's asked, but not all kids will ask. No, and then the other thing she said to me last year, she said to me, "Mummy, why are all rich people mean?" And given what I do for a living, absolutely floored me. And I thought, wow, where's this come from? And so I said,
I would be so interested to know where that comes from.
Well, I'll tell you where it came from. Because that's exactly what I said. I said, talk to me a bit more about this, because I'm thinking, God, what have I said? And she said, well, we'd just been to watch 101 Dalmatians at Norwich Theatre. She said, "Mummy, Cruella, she's really mean and she's really rich." And then you think about it, you think about all the movies that we watch, all the rich people really mean. So they're picking this stuff up all the time. So we need some education in schools and out there and out about. But so we're doing that, which is really exciting, which I'd love some support from people with. Just some shares and things on social media would be fab.
That's such an interesting thing you've said there, because I know lots, I'm not rich, but I know so many rich people, and they're just the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Absolutely.
But you're so right in saying that it's most people's perception.
Yeah.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a shame. Interesting.
Yeah.
Right, and on that note, we'd better wrap up. But that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
I think, without saying, we all wish you the best in your business. And I'm sure in a few years' time you'll have
I'll come back again.
Quite the team behind you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
The Norfolk Business Show. with Danny Snelling. Sponsored by MT Comms.
Just a quick word from me. Absolutely thrilled with the response and feedback we've had so far. It really has been so positive. We're going to continue with it. I do just need to ask you all, please, just to take that 1 second to click the subscribe, like, follow button, share them. Just do something for me, because we're never going to be monetized. We're not going to make money from this show, and that's not our intention. We're a local Norfolk show, so we're never going to get those worldwide viewing figures that need to monetize channels. It's not about that. We genuinely are just trying to give back to the business community in Norfolk. So please do that favour for me. It will just increase the visibility of those guests we have on the show, so they get more impact from it. And who knows, if you're a future guest, then you'll get the benefit of that as well. So please do that for me. Obviously, we're sponsoring it from MT Comms. Please do keep us in mind if we can help with anything IT related. Office 365 support, cybersecurity, 365, that sort of thing. We also do telecoms, mobile, CCTV. There's loads of stuff we do. Just reach out to us and ask us if you can help with anything. Thank you, guys.